All right, let's talk about something huge. It's a story about massive ambition, national security, and, well, a pretty critical failure. We're diving into NavIC, India's very own homegrown satellite navigation system. You know, this thing was supposed to be a massive symbol of self-reliance, a real technological triumph. But right now, its signal has just gone silent. And when I say silent, I mean that literally. As of March of this year, for all intents and purposes, India's ambitious answer to GPS is, well, it's gone dark. And you've got to understand, this is a huge deal. We're talking about a piece of critical national infrastructure just switching off. So the big question is, what on earth happened, right? How does a project that costs billions, that was years in the making, and is absolutely vital for both civilians and the military, just stop working? That's exactly what we're going to break down right now. Okay, so to really get our heads around how this all fell apart, we need to look at what's actually going on up there. You know, what does it really mean for a whole satellite system to be offline? Well, it all comes down to some very simple numbers. Here's the most important number of this whole story: 3. Right now, out of an entire constellation of satellites that were launched into orbit, only 3 are fully functional. Just 3. Keep that number in your head. Because this is the magic number: 4. See, to get a precise 3D position, I'm talking about not just where you are on a map, but also your altitude. Any navigation system needs to see a bare minimum of 4 satellites. So why 4? Let's get into it. Now, I know what you're thinking. The difference between 3 and 4, it doesn't sound like a big deal, right? But in the world of satellite navigation, it's everything. It's the whole ballgame. And it all comes down to a really cool concept called trilateration. Okay, let's break this down. Imagine one satellite pings you. All it knows is that you're somewhere on the surface of a huge sphere around it. That's not very helpful. Now, add a second satellite. The 2 spheres intersect, and suddenly you've narrowed your location down to a perfect circle. Get more, so you add a third satellite. Now its sphere cuts that circle at just 2 possible points. We're almost there, but are you at point A or point B? And that, right there, is why you absolutely need that 4th satellite. It nails down which of those 2 spots is the right one and gives you your exact 3D location. So you see, falling from 4 satellites to 3 isn't just a small downgrade. It's a catastrophic failure. The system literally can't do its primary job. So here's the bottom line. With only 3 working satellites, NavIC simply cannot tell you precisely where you are. Period. At that point, it doesn't matter if you have 3, 2, or 1. The result is exactly the same. The system is functionally blind. So now that we get what happened, a complete system failure, we've got to ask why. And this wasn't some sudden, unexpected explosion in space. No, this was a slow-motion disaster. It was caused by one single part failing over and over again. Let's dissect this failure. And this chart, wow, it really lays it all out. Of the 11 satellites India launched for this whole system, remember, only 3 are working. 2 of them didn't even make it to the right orbit. 1, fair enough, just got old and completed its mission. But just look at that huge chunk of the chart. 5 satellites. That's nearly half the entire fleet, all knocked out by the exact same problem: atomic clock failure. So what even is an atomic clock, and why does it matter so much? Well, it's basically the heart and soul of a navigation satellite. It's a hyper-accurate clock that sends out a time signal. Your phone then calculates how far it is from the satellite based on how long that signal took to reach you. Now, get this. If that clock's timing is off by just 1/1000th of a second, a single nanosecond, your location could be off by 30 centimeters. So if that clock fails, the satellite is basically just a useless piece of metal for navigation. I mean, it's like this program was just cursed with bad luck. It wasn't just one thing. You had a launch where the protective nose cone on the rocket just didn't open, trapping the satellite inside. Then there was another one that got to orbit just fine, but its engine failed to fire, leaving it stranded. But those were almost sideshows. The real systemic problem was the same imported atomic clocks failing again and again and again. It really makes you wonder, right? Was this just an unforeseen flaw, or was this the predictable risk you take when you depend so heavily on a single foreign part? And all these technical failures, they add up to a huge strategic setback for India. To really grasp why this matters so much, why this is more than just a tech problem, we actually have to go back in time. We need to look at why NavIC was even created in the first place. The whole story starts back in 1999, during the Kargil War. In the middle of the conflict, India asked the United States for access to its GPS data for the region, and the US said no. They were denied. And that was the moment. It became crystal clear that for its own national security, India simply could not afford to depend on another country's system. It needed its own eyes in the sky. And so the idea for NavIC was born, right then and there, out of a need for true strategic independence. And that brings us to the painful irony at the heart of this entire story. This quote just nails it. The whole point, the entire reason for this project's existence, was to build an independent, indigenous system. And yet it was brought to its knees because the single most critical component, those atomic clocks, were imported. Think about that. The mission for self-reliance was completely undone by a dependence on foreign tech. And not just any foreign tech, but tech that kept failing. And if you want to see just how big a deal this is, take a look at this. This table puts India's situation in a really stark global context. You've got the US with its GPS, Russia with GLONASS, the EU with Galileo, China with Beidou. All of them have these massive, robust constellations with dozens of satellites. And then you look down at the bottom, and you see NavIC, with just 3. It's a powerful visual that shows you exactly how big the gap is that needs to be filled. But look, this is not where the story ends. Not at all. In fact, this huge failure might just be the very thing that sparks the program's rebirth. It could come back stronger and way more resilient than before. So let's look at what's next for NavIC. And this is the crucial part. It shows that India is learning directly from its mistakes. It's really simple when you lay it out like this. The problem with Generation 1? Relying on those faulty imported atomic clocks. The solution for Generation 2? Easy. Build your own. It's a direct, head-on fix for the single biggest point of failure. And here's the best part. The revival is already happening. The very first satellite of this new generation, NVS-01, is already up there, in orbit. And guess what it's carrying? An Indian-made atomic clock. This is happening. More launches are on the schedule to rebuild the entire system, but this time with complete Indian technological control. So this isn't just about patching up the old system. No, this is about owning it from the ground up. And they even have a long-term vision for this to potentially go global. So that leaves us with a really big question, doesn't it? Do we look at this as just a massive failure, or was it actually a painful but necessary lesson? By exposing this one critical weakness, the crisis basically forced the creation of a truly self-reliant solution. Maybe, just maybe, this missing signal was the loud and clear wake-up call India needed to finally achieve the real technological independence it's been after for decades. Something to think about.